Welcome to Global Facts. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. This is going to blow your mind. The United States Supreme Court is about to decide a case with staggering consequences, one that could alter the very fabric of American governance and the global economy. At the heart of the matter is the fate of $1 trillion in tariffs imposed by former President Donald Trump, a sum so vast it touches nearly every corner of the U.S. economy and ripples across international markets. As the court's new term begins, the central question is clear and historic. Who truly holds the power to tax and regulate commerce in America? Is it the president, acting swiftly in the name of national interest, or Congress, the body designed by the Constitution to represent the people's will and control the nation's purse strings? This isn't just about import duties or the price of goods on store shelves. It's a constitutional showdown that could redefine the limits of executive authority for generations to come. The stakes are enormous, with the potential to shift the balance of power between the branches of government. Lower courts have already ruled that the tariffs were an overreach of presidential power, igniting fierce debate among legal scholars, politicians, and business leaders alike. Now, the 9 justices of the Supreme Court will have the final say, weighing arguments that reach back to the founding principles of the nation. Their decision will set a precedent that could either expand the president's ability to act unilaterally on trade and foreign policy, or reaffirm Congress's exclusive authority over taxation and commerce. The ruling could tip the scales of power, either granting future presidents more freedom to impose tariffs or reinforcing the checks and balances that define American democracy. The outcome will determine if a president can unilaterally wield tariffs as a tool of foreign policy, shaping America's relationships with allies and rivals alike, or if that authority remains firmly in the hands of Congress, ensuring that such sweeping economic decisions are subject to public debate and legislative oversight. As the nation watches with anticipation, the court's verdict will shape the balance of power for years to come, influencing not just this administration, but everyone that follows. The world is watching too, as global markets, foreign governments, and international businesses await the outcome of a decision that could reshape the rules of global trade. Because what happens here in the Supreme Court will echo far beyond America's borders, setting the tone for international relations and economic policy for years to come. The fight over presidential tariff authority is just the latest chapter in a long, complicated struggle between Congress and the White House, a contest that has shaped the very core of American government for generations. From the earliest days of the Republic, lawmakers have debated who should control the nation's economic levers. The Constitution clearly gives Congress the power to tax and regulate commerce, reflecting the founders' deep suspicion of unchecked executive power. Yet, as America's role in the world grew more complex, Congress began to delegate some of this authority to the president, hoping to make the country more nimble in a rapidly changing global economy. The Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act of 1934 marked a turning point. For the first time, Congress allowed presidents to negotiate tariffs directly with other nations, aiming to boost exports and pull the country out of the Great Depression. This new flexibility was seen as essential for responding to global economic crises. Later laws, like the Trade Act of 1974, expanded presidential powers even further. These acts gave presidents a suite of tools to counter unfair trade practices, respond to emergencies, and protect American industries, sometimes with little advance notice to Congress. This evolving partnership was meant to balance the need for swift action with the principle of democratic oversight. But the language of these laws is often broad and vague, leaving plenty of room for interpretation, and at times, for overreach. That ambiguity has allowed presidents from both parties to stretch their powers, sometimes far beyond what Congress originally intended. Each administration has tested the limits, citing national security or economic threats to justify bold moves. The Supreme Court has occasionally weighed in on these disputes, but it's never faced a case with stakes as high as today's battle over tariffs and executive authority. Trump's tariffs are unprecedented in both size and scope, affecting hundreds of billions of dollars in goods and sparking global trade tensions. These actions have forced a new reckoning over where Congress's power ends and the president's begins, raising urgent questions about the future of American democracy. Now, the Supreme Court must decide, has the executive branch gone too far in claiming powers that rightfully belong to Congress? The outcome could set a precedent for generations to come. The answer could permanently shift the balance of power in Washington, redefining the relationship between the branches of government and the rules of American trade for decades ahead. At the heart of this case is a clash between Congress's power to tax and the president's authority in foreign affairs. The framers gave Congress control over taxes and tariffs to prevent unchecked executive power. But as chief diplomat, the president needs flexibility to respond to global threats. Are Trump's tariffs a tax, Congress's domain, or a foreign policy tool justified by delegated authority? The court must decide if Congress meant to give the president such sweeping power, or if this was an overreach. The answer will shape the boundaries of presidential authority for decades. The justices now face a tangled web of constitutional principles and legislative history. Challengers argue the tariffs are, in effect, a tax, and only Congress can impose taxes. They say Trump bypassed Congress, violating the separation of powers. Lower courts agreed, finding no clear authorization for such massive tariffs. The challengers warn that upholding the tariffs would set a dangerous precedent, letting future presidents sideline Congress on major economic decisions. They urge the court to restore the constitutional balance and reaffirm Congress's central role in economic lawmaking. The stakes, they argue, are nothing less than the future of American democracy. The defense argues the tariffs are a lawful tool of foreign policy, not an unconstitutional tax. They point to laws like the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which give the president broad authority to act in national emergencies. The administration claims Congress deliberately gave the president flexibility to confront global threats quickly. Supporters say tariffs used for foreign policy are distinct from taxes for revenue. They argue the president acted to protect American industries and jobs from unfair competition. The defense frames the president as a decisive leader, not an overreaching executive. The Supreme Court must decide if this vision of presidential power fits the Constitution. The trillion-dollar tariffs have rippled through the U.S. economy, raising costs for businesses and consumers alike. Importers face higher prices for goods and materials, forcing tough choices and supply chain disruptions. Many businesses pass these costs to customers, driving up prices on everything from electronics to groceries. The result? A regressive tax that hits lower and middle-income families hardest. Some industries saw short-term gains, but many, like farmers and manufacturers, suffered job losses and lost markets. The tariffs have created winners and losers, but the overall picture is one of economic disruption. The consequences are felt in every corner of the country. America's tariffs sent shockwaves through the global economy, straining relationships with key allies. Countries like the EU, Japan, and Canada retaliated with their own tariffs, escalating trade disputes. China hit back hard, especially against U.S. farmers. The cycle of retaliation created uncertainty and undermined the rules-based global trading system. International institutions like the World Trade Organization were weakened as the U.S. acted unilaterally. Trust between nations eroded and new trade blocs began to form. The long-term effects are still unfolding, but the world's trading landscape may be permanently changed. America's actions have forced allies and rivals alike to rethink their economic ties. As the Supreme Court prepares to rule, experts are deeply divided. Some warn that upholding the tariffs would dangerously expand executive power, letting presidents bypass Congress on economic policy. Others argue Congress has long delegated broad trade authority to the president, and the law supports the executive's actions. Economists, meanwhile, highlight the real-world costs, higher prices, disrupted supply chains, and damaged international relations. The stakes are enormous, with the court's decision set to shape not just legal doctrine, but the nation's economic future. This case is a crossroads for the separation of powers and the health of the U.S. economy. The justices must weigh legal theory against practical consequences. The outcome will echo for generations. The Supreme Court's decision will redraw the boundaries of presidential power for the 21st century. This landmark case is not just about legal interpretations, it's about the future direction of American governance. The implications are vast and will be felt across various sectors of society. A ruling for the president could shift economic authority toward the White House, making tariffs a primary tool of foreign policy. This could lead to more centralized decision-making in trade matters, potentially bypassing the traditional checks and balances that involve Congress. A decision for the challengers would reaffirm Congress's central role in economic lawmaking and check executive ambition. This would ensure that economic policies are debated and scrutinized by elected representatives, maintaining a balance of power. Either way, the ruling will impact prices, jobs, and America's global standing. The ripple effects will be seen in everyday life. from the cost of groceries to the stability of employment in various industries. This case is a reminder that constitutional principles have real-world consequences. The decisions made in the highest court of the land resonate through the fabric of society, influencing how laws are applied and understood. The balance of power between President and Congress affects every American's daily life. From the taxes we pay to the services we receive, the interplay between these branches of government shapes our daily experiences. The conversation about power and accountability won't end with this decision. It's an ongoing dialogue that requires constant vigilance and participation from the public to ensure that democracy remains robust and responsive. It's up to citizens to stay informed, engaged, and hold leaders accountable. Active participation in the democratic process is essential for maintaining the integrity and effectiveness of our political system. The future of American democracy depends on it. Our collective actions today will determine the strength and direction of our nation for generations to come.